Being the appointed hour, I hereby call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Morgan, would you please call the roll?
Nancy Gray. Here. David Griffith. Ruth Cox. Jim Morrison.
Here.
James Herring. Richard Fry.
Here.
Joseph Anderson.
Here.
Trip York.
Here.
And James Woods. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Very good. And if I'm not mistaken, we're withdrawing the minutes from review tonight? Is that correct? Okay, so we'll pick those up at our next regularly scheduled meeting. Okay, that brings us to new business, which are our certificate of appropriateness hearings. The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It is responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, being downtown and Riverside, based on U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and the New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds quasi-judicial hearings on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. That includes hearing sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who received notice of the hearings, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinion, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during the hearings. The Commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at the hearing that directly relates to the historic district guidelines. Morgan, if you would, please swear in those who wish to testify this evening. All right, here is a summary of how we will generally conduct our hearings this afternoon. The HPC administrator will provide an application overview. The applicant will present. Proponents and opponents who receive notice will be allowed to make comment. We may have some periods of rebuttal between the parties. The administrator will present staff findings and recommendations. The applicant will have one final opportunity to address the commission. Then we, the commissioners, will deliberate upon the evidence and testimony heard. And then we may also ask for questions from the applicant. I will call for a motion to either approve or deny the application, stated with findings of fact. We'll discuss that motion, should it be presented, and then we'll call for a vote. Again, a certificate of appropriateness can be approved with conditions, or denied. Okay. With that said, Morgan, what's our first agenda item tonight?
Our first agenda item this evening is 405 Avenue A. This is for Riverside United Methodist Church.
Okay. And before we get going on this particular application, it's a unique circumstance. It involves an installation that was begun without a certificate of appropriateness. There have been a number of communications, particularly between myself and the applicant, Riverside United Methodist Church. Just as a matter of record and transparency, both staff and I met with the church on August 3rd to evaluate the roof system that was being installed. On August 25th, we met with representatives of the church to discuss our concerns with the installation and also to get their point of view. On August 30th, we had a conference call with the pastor, again to discuss our findings as well as options. On September 6th, the applicant came into a work session. And then as late as today, September 20th, staff and I met with representatives of the church to talk a little bit about how the application procedures or the presentation procedures for tonight will transpire, and so they have some idea of what to expect in terms of presenting evidence for the first time. Okay, so with that said, Morgan, I think we need to ask for the applicant to make their presentation.
Okay. Would you like me to give a briefing on what the application's about?
And you certainly may do that as well.
All right.
You need to keep me straight tonight.
405 Avenue A this evening. This is to include a request to install a metal roof with corrugated pans and a ridge cap in the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. I should note that this is an after-the-fact request. The Riverside United Methodist Church Board of Trustees will be making their presentation this evening, and I will pull up that while they get ready for their presentation.
I'm Rob Barley, Trustee Chair, Riverside United Methodist Church. And first of all, again, I'd like to apologize. I did not know the steps we had to go through to put a roof on. We got into this roof, and once we got started and saw how bad it was, we basically had to continue, and that's where we got into the metal part of the roof that the question is. And again, I'd like to apologize. We didn't set out to do anything wrong.
We appreciate that.
But, you know, we do ask for your forgiveness, basically.
Okay, and I believe there were others in your group who were
Yes.
part of the presentation. This
Yes,
would be the
Mr.
appropriate time, I would think, for
Mr.
them
Judge Johnson.
to speak.
I'm Joe Johnson. I moved here in New Bern in July 13th, 1961, so I've been around for a while. My wife and I have certainly enjoyed our 56 years here, and this is the first time that I've had any occasion that I even wanted to meet with the city officials in any way, because I've been pretty happy with most of the decisions, and one of the decisions they made was bringing us that fresh water all the way from Cove City. So we've been drinking mighty fine water, the best in the nation, for quite some time. So, but now they're changing it, and the state is making us go back to the old method. But our methods of treatment is better now. But anyway, I've been a member of Riverside for a little, my wife and I, a little over 20 years. And it's a quaint little church. It's definitely a church that I'd like to keep going to. Like Rob said, we certainly didn't intend to do anything wrong, but we have had a leaky roof for about the last 20 years that I've been there. We've had Mr. Bingle and several other people would work on it, and they would work on it, and when they worked on it, they said, we got it fixed. And by the time we got the paint dried, usually another storm come along, and it was wet again. And this is the first time we really found out the problem was in the superstructure of the dome. And so when we was trying to get the lower part fixed, the contractor found this part, and he offered to donate us this metal for the roof, and it seemed like the thing to do since we operate on a shoestring anyway most of the time. We always had to borrow money from the Methodist Conference at the end of the year to meet our budget. And this, our treasurer will tell you about that a little later on. But when I found out about it, I went down and looked at it myself when I heard about the situation. I'm sorry we violated, the historical guidelines on it, and we certainly didn't mean to do it. But I looked at it, and of course, I took the pictures. I didn't have a picture of the old one. I didn't have a picture of the old roof, but the pastor put one on Facebook, so I copied it. And the old roof, it's amazing that when from the curb view, I can hardly tell the difference.
So, Mr. Joe, perhaps you could put it on the overhead so that.
Well, I don't know exactly.
Well, Miss Morgan's going to come help.
Okay, will you help me with that? I appreciate that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you can continue.
Okay, as you can see, this is the old, one of the last pictures of the old roof. And these are the ones on the curved roof. And from a curved view, it's hard to distinguish really what's wrong with it. Of course, I do not know, I don't have that specific eyesight, but you can tell the difference. But when you're looking from the curve, which is most people are reviewing this historical church, when they look at it, looking at it from the curve, they're not looking at it from a drone, which would point out the mistake, the evident fires that we have in it, that we should not have. Because this roof has been leaking for 20 years, we got to mess up. You just
Would you like me to keep turning, sir?
Just show there's several views on it, but it's all from the curb side, so it's hard to detect that there's anything wrong with it, or if anything not according to the way it's supposed to be. Inside of the church. This is the damage. This leaking roof has been leaking for 20 years. That's causes. You just notice it. And this is not all the damage. We can't. This thing ended the way it is now. There's not anything we can do until we get a decision on this, really. This is a copy of a house on this same street, has a done for roof, except it's different color. The done full of materials. I was told that the railroad station that we were restoring in our area had the same roof, but I went down there and looked at it, and it's not exactly the same roof. I this fire station, the railroad station is where I endured the first hurricane once we came down. I was with Mayor Briggs, he lived across the street from me, and I was going to leave town when they said evacuate, because my house was destroyed completely or not on. So and I wasn't there at that time, of course. But he took us to the railway station, and we went through what the name of the hurricane was. But I actually saw the soil factory totally destroyed right across the street from me. He assured me that no water had ever been in the railroad station, and that was a place of peace, and it was.
I'm glad that worked out for you. I'm glad that worked out for you.
I'm glad it did. It made me a believer in being in the same place.
Don't forget to show you pictures there.
Okay, this is the railroad station. Also, the city, I went by and saw this police station. The police station has a very similar roof. I think you need a drone, really, a drone view to actually tell the difference between our roof. I think if you see it from the curve, you would think they were all the same. Also, went down to fire station. Fire station, same roof. Went down to courthouse, same roof. And courthouse annex has got the same roof. So basically, we're pleading with you. We're pleading with you because this is our difference between probably having a church and not having one. If we have to comply with this rule, I think this will destroy our church. So I'm asking you, as Christians, and if you're not a Christian, if you're a Christian, I'd like you to pray about it before you vote on it. But I would like for you to make sure that you vote in favor of us so we can keep the roof, because I think this is the difference between the city owning the church someday and not being them having to decide whether they want to destroy it or keep it up. So I think your decision today is so important. So I'd ask you to vote that we can keep the roof.
All right. Thank you.
And the treasurer would explain the financial situation.
Joe, would you like this back?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I got out of sequence. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We're going to get through it.
I don't know anything about what's in the bank account. Thank you for your time. I'm a member of the church, the Riverside United Methodist Church, and I live in the historical district on Craven Street. We've been here 6 years. I've learned a few things about the historical preservation. Fortunately, I have not learned any of them the hard way. The house has been standing there 130 years, so I have an appreciation for what the committee's or the commission's purpose is. So thanks for your time. This may be some repetition, as I'm nearly stone deaf, and so I haven't heard everything they've said. But it's going to be a summary of where we started and how we ended. And I promise you, this is 16-point font, and it won't take very long. This project started as a repair of the flat roof on the church. And you've seen the damage that is a result of that on the inside of the sanctuary. And there was no real consideration given to changing the metal roof at the outset. But we asked the roofing contractor, while you're up there, would you please take a look at that metal roof and make a recommendation to us whether we should scrape it and paint it or whether it would be better off to have it just torn off, because we'll have to be planning ahead for that. He said, well, I'll do that when I'm up there. And his report after that was you could put your fist through that roof in a few places and it would be cheaper and easier to tear it off and replace it. And he added that he had material that he could donate. And I specifically asked the question, is that material compliant with the guidelines? He said, yes, it is. Good. It's good for me. I'm happy with that. So later on at another meeting of the trustees, they voted to spend the money for the labor to put that new material on. And without that free material and his assessment to remove and replace, we would not have proceeded with anything but the flat portion. That said, the new roof contains corrugation in its panels, which means it's incongruous according to the guidelines. No mistake about it. That's what it says, no corrugation. But there isn't, that's the only difference as far as we know. It's the same material as that removed, a tin roof, a metal roof. I have one on my house. The corrugation was previously allowed up until the guidelines were revised at some point. I don't know when, but the copy I have is March 2017. The same material that's been pointed out is used on numerous roofs in the district, and there was no reason for us to believe that it was not compliant, nor was there a reason for us to believe that we needed, this is our belief, it's not necessarily correct, no reason for us to believe we need a COA because we were going to remove and replace with the same material. Here too we may have been wrong, but if so, the non-compliance was not known nor intentional. There was no attempt to hide any of the work. It was done right out there in broad daylight. A stop work order was issued at about the 80% completion point, and it was a particularly wet period. As you know, we've had a lot of rain, and it was determined that we have got to cover that roof or we're going to be in trouble. So they covered the roof following the stop work order, and soon after the final notice came. We do not disagree that the new roof is incongruous with the letter of the guidelines. However, we're simply requesting a variance to allow the new roof to remain in place as it is in conformity with numerous other roofs in the Riverside area. Our request is based partly on the fact that we do not have the funds to replace the roof without severely impacting the ability to make further repairs. But it's also, we do believe it is congruous with the other parts of the neighborhood. And this is, I'm going to be careful here. I don't want you to think I'm preaching to you. The purpose
It's okay if you need to.
Okay. The stated purpose of the New Bern Historic District Guidelines is to preserve the historic character and architectural fabric of New Bern. By definition, a guideline is a statement by which to determine a course of action. A guideline aims to streamline particular processes according to a set routine or standard practice. By definition, following a guideline is not normally mandatory. Guidelines are normally not binding and normally not necessarily enforceable. We understand there has been a complaint that the roof is non-compliant. The roof is technically non-compliant. We believe as there are no numerous, the roof is technically non-compliant, but we believe as there are numerous like-type roofs in the district, the architectural fabric is not compromised, and we in fact have a longer-lasting, more attractive roof than that was previously in place. Now lastly, in the event that the order in the final notice stands and an exception or variance is not granted, we request that fines and fees be set in abeyance for some period of time yet to be determined in order that we could garner the financial resources necessary to put that roof into conformity as outlined in the final notice. We appreciate your worthy consideration and your time. I'm sorry that we all ended up down here, but we're thankful for your help.
And we're thankful you're here tonight. So does that about wrap up your presentation?
Could we have that video at this time?
We certainly could. Okay. Does that take care of us for the moment?
I certainly would like to thank you for considering all of this, and
Certainly.
we're very thankful to have a roof that doesn't leak after 20 years, and please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we will accept this as a conclusion of the presentation from the applicant's point of view. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Very good. Is there anyone who received notice who would like to speak for or against the application?
Tim Thompson, 404 Avenue A, and I did receive notification of this. Let me say up front that I'm probably going to be a bit of an outlier as far as other speakers. My intent is not to poke anyone in the eye or accuse anyone of anything. I'm trying to provide information based on my knowledge related to the Riverside Historic District and preservation guidelines in New Bern. A couple things that I'd like to point out to start with, and this is from the application, Section 2, reference to specific guidelines. One comment from that section, it says that the panel that has been used was recently taken off the approved list. Having been on the HPC since 2011, there never was an approved list of roofing products with the old guidelines from 2009 as well as with the current guidelines, unless you folks have implemented something in the past 2 months. Another point that I'd like to try to provide some factual clarification. It states in the application there are 16 houses on Avenue A, and of the 16, 5 of them have the exact same roof system we installed. If I may, Lauren, can you help me project this, please? Thank you.
You can zoom out a little better. Is that good for you?
If everyone can see this. What I've done here is, this is Avenue A, this is the 300 block, this is the 400 block, this is where Riverside Methodist Church is located. The parcels with a green circle are parcels that actually have a structure on them. There are 22 structures on Avenue A. Here is Riverside Methodist Church. So of those 22 parcels, and I'm including a house on National Avenue that is on the corner but actually faces National Avenue. This house faces North Craven, but just because it's on the corner, I'm considering that as being on Avenue A. So there are 22 structures. Riverside Methodist Church is the only public structure on this street. The rest are residences. If you'll notice the circles in red, these are properties where a roof has been replaced since 2005. I know that because I have lived on Avenue A since 2005, and having been on the HPC previously, starting in 2011, I was familiar with every roof project that went on. The application states that 5 of the houses have exact same roof systems. I question the accuracy of that. The roof system that Riverside Methodist Church has installed is a manufactured system with snap-on panels. 313 Avenue A has a manufactured system. 310 Avenue A has a manufactured system. And 304 Avenue A has a manufactured system. And those were all done in 313 and 304 were done in 2011. The HPC administrator at the time did have communication with those property owners. 310 Avenue A, manufactured system. The property owner did contact the HPC administrator at the time and had a discussion with them. I'll come back to 310 in a minute. 307 Avenue A, the standing seam metal roof on that house, it was probably the original roof, was replaced with shingles sometime between 2015 and 2016. By that time, the preservation ordinance in New Bern had been updated where the HBC could update the minors list that could be approved by the administrator, and the administrator approved that. In 2011, 404 Avenue A, the roof was replaced on this house. The original standing seam metal roof was replaced with a replacement in-kind standing seam metal roof, probably put on the same way that the original roof was put on this house in 1905. 413 Avenue A, this had a partial roof replacement. The porch roof was replaced exactly, identically, in kind with the standing seam metal roof in 2017. As far as other roof types, 408 Avenue A has a shingle roof. This is actually new construction, constructed in the 90s. 411 Avenue A has a shingle roof. That house was built in 1914, one of the original houses on Avenue A. And then 307, as I mentioned earlier, the roof was replaced on that, standing seam metal roof, went to shingle. So there are only 3 manufactured roofs on Avenue A that correspond to what Riverside Methodist Church is installing. The difference is 313 Avenue A, 304 Avenue A have the perfectly flat, uncorrugated panels as specified in the guidelines. And at the time, since we were under the 2009 guidelines when these 2 roofs were replaced, there was communication between the property owner and the HPC administrator with the guidance that they needed to use perfectly flat panels with no corrugation. Now, let's go back to 310 Avenue A. The applicant did show a picture of that roof that did have corrugation. This roof was replaced, original standing seam metal roof was replaced with the manufactured product 2015-2016 when the administrator was allowed to approve roof replacements without HPC approval. They could do it administratively. The property owner did contact the administrator at the time, and the administrator told the property owner to use a flat panel as a replacement. The key word that the administrator left out was non-corrugated. The property owner put on the roof that does have a slight corrugation to it. In the sense of fairness, the administrator agreed that they were not clear enough. I was involved in that conversation since I was the chairman at the time, and we agreed that as a sense of fairness, since the applicant did make the effort to contact the administrator to have that discussion, and the applicant did make the effort to follow the recommendation of the administrator, we felt that it was not fair to require that property owner to replace the roof. So that is why that roof does have a slight corrugation to it. There is only one other roof that I am aware of in the Riverside Historic District or in the Downtown Historic District that has some type of corrugated roof, and that would be, I believe it is 511 Metcalf Street. That roof was put on probably before 2009, before the 2009 guidelines were updated. There is no other roof, having been on the HPC for 6 years, and Commissioner Fry, you were on there several years before I was. As far as I know, the HPC never approved a roof with any corrugation. It was always specified as a flat panel. So, a little bit of history on that. And just as extra information, here are the approved minor works. This happens to be, I printed this out in February of 2016, and this one item, you have to excuse my writing on here, this one item that is underlined, indicating that this is the newest addition to the list of minor works at the time. It says replacement of standing seam metal roofs with asphalt shingles of a non-variegated color is allowed. That's something that the HPC administrator can approve without HPC approval. All right, another piece of information I'd like to provide to the commission, and just out of fairness, let me also give a copy of this to the applicant. And Morgan, would you like to provide this to the commission, just so that you've got it in the record? What I'm providing you is in August of 2012, at the request of the HPC, and Commissioner Fry, you probably remember this, a packet went out to every property owner in the Downtown Historic District and in the Riverside Historic District. And what I've given you is the letter that was attached to the packet. Morgan, I can provide the entire packet if you would like.
That would be good.
The other parts of it, there's a sheet that explains what major works are. There is a sheet that defines the process for COA. This was in the 2009 guidelines. It's also in the current guidelines. There's a sheet explaining minor works and major works that comes from the 2009 guidelines. And then there is a map of the downtown and the Riverside Historic District. But what I want to focus on is the letter from 2012 that went out to all property owners. On the second page of this letter, there are two bulleted items. First bulleted item on page 2 states that HBC regulates exterior alterations to all properties downtown and Riverside Historic Districts. Certificate appropriateness is required for any alterations beyond normal maintenance or in-kind repairs. And in parentheses, it says using the same replacement material and dimensions. Underline, it says, when in doubt and before spending substantial funds on design fees, please call us, being the planning department at the time, to discuss your plans and any questions you may have. Second bulleted item on that page. Be very cautious when selecting new materials and products for the exterior of your property, as typically only materials commercially available at the time the property was built may be used. Common issues are siding, windows, doors, roofing material, railings, and so forth. Now, as far as the guidelines are concerned, going back to this comment about, the panel they're using had recently been taken off the approved list. Well, the 2009 guidelines are somewhat irrelevant in this case since the guidelines have been updated, but just for yucks, here's what the 2009 guidelines said. And this is on page 19, and this is item 6. Choose a compatible substitute or replacement for either the original or existing roof material in the event the historic roofing material is too deteriorated to repair. Standing seam metal roofs that are replaced with new standing seam metal roofs shall have a pan that seams no greater than 24 inches in the center. Provides other information on, you can use asphalt, shingles, so forth. But the thing I want to point out in the old guidelines, in all cases involving roof replacement, the property owner shall furnish the HPC with a sample of the roof product to be used. And as the applicant said, that was not done. Looking at the new guidelines, and this is guideline 4.5.4, very clear and specific as to what the roofing product should be. Standing seam metal roof shall have a pan with no greater than 24 inches. Pan shall be completely flat without corrugation. This language was specifically added because of the house on Metcalf Street, because of confusion with with property owners in the past and because of the property on Avenue A, 310 Avenue A, where we had the kerfuffle of the property owner not understanding what the administrator was saying, the keyword being uncorrugated. So now it is very clear in the guidelines what is required as far as metal roofing material. The other thing that I want to point out in the guidelines, this is on page 1.1 of the new guidelines, and this was specifically put in here to put the responsibility on the property owners, to have some communication with the HPC administrator and with the HPC. So if you look at section 1.2 of the current guidelines and read down towards the bottom, the sentence starting with any exterior, it says, any exterior change you make to a property, whether a structure or significant landscaping, requires you to contact Development Services to determine if a certificate of appropriateness is required. Failure to do so is a violation of New Bern's land use ordinance and is subject to fines. And placing blame, mistakes, whatever. That's not the purpose of what I'm trying to drill home. What I'm trying to drill home is there are two things that happen here. One is a violation of the guidelines, inappropriate roofing material. And the reason the guideline was violated was because the property owner did not take the responsibility as a property owner in a historic district to interact with the HPC administrator. So that is the core of the point that I'm making.
That about wrap you up?
I think that will do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is there anybody else who received notification that would like to speak for or against the application? I think for the record, Mr. Robb, raise your hand, Mr. Robb. I think you received notification and you're affiliated with the church. Also, for the record, I think we received in our packets a letter, if you will, in support of the church. And although we cannot accept that as actual testimony, it was in fact received. All right, so we have no one else. And the reason I'm concerned about people who receive notification is because they have standing, and when one has standing in an application, your story is a priority to be heard, for lack of coming up with a better legal way to explain that. But that's what it is. So the applicant gets a chance to rebut some of this at this point.
Not really, but
Okay.
The thing I'd like to point out is, the members of the church are not property owners. We do not own the church. The Methodist Conference actually owns our church. And because we asked them for help on it, and they wouldn't even furnish us an attorney, but they said we needed one. But I'm sure you guys
I'm not sure you need one.
We said, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we do. It's basically, if we have a no decision on this thing, it's basically going to destroy the church. We're going to end up going under, and we sure don't want that to happen. I'm only 83. I can find another church, but there's a lot of members that's been in that church since the beginning of time, and I'd like to see them be able to finish their life there.
I assure you it's not our intent to make you find another church. All right. So we've dealt with folks who have standing. Is there any other public comment, for or against? You need to come up to the microphone. And Ms. Sharon, if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sharon Mahakis. I live at 1009 North Craven Street. We've been there for going on 31 years. I think there's something that Mr. Thompson isn't aware of, and that is the fact that this whole roof thing was an emergency job. After the great deluge of June, we found out that all the patching that we had done in prior years had failed and caused an enormous amount of damage. You only saw a tip of the iceberg. There's more damage in the church that we don't have pictures for here tonight. And that when we asked for roofers to come and present their estimates for repairing and replacing the roof, we decided on Robert because, number one, he came with the manpower, number two, he came with the proper equipment, and when he saw the extensive damage that had been caused to the inside of our church, he decided to make us a priority, and we are grateful for that, because no sooner did he put a stop order on that we went into 20 consecutive days of rain. And had he not made it a priority and made those decisions in a timely manner that he did, we would have sustained tens of thousands of additional dollars of damage to our church. Product we have now may not be what you want us to have, but it's the best product that our money can buy. It is 75 years of no maintenance protection for our building. The ridges will help that water to move quicker and faster. When you have been watching a church patch a roof for 30 years, you want the best thing that you can get up there. We have to be very careful stewards of the limited funds that we have. We didn't follow the guidelines. We were in a time crunch racing against the next rainstorm, and now we have something up there that is clearly not within your guidelines. But it meets our needs to the best that we can get. Are we educated on the process of all of this now? Yes. Do we still have an enormous amount of work to be done to the church? Yes. There's a lot of repointing of bricks so that we can button up the facade so it doesn't leak, and that is not going to be cheap.
Okay. And if you would, wrap it up.
So we're asking tonight for a variance so that we can continue to do repairs to protect the building that we have. And I just, I hope that you see clear to give us that variance so that we can finish repointing the brick and doing the repairs that need to be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize for stepping on you, but I think at this point we understand how we got here. And we also understand the situation with the roof profile. And we also understand, and in fact, I'd rather not talk anymore about, at least from your point of view and the public, of whether it should comply with the guidelines, and the church saying they understand it doesn't comply. We've all got the picture here of where we are and where we're trying to go. And so I believe I've maybe summarized everything we've heard so far. And so is there any other public comment with something we haven't heard tonight? All right. So with that, let's close the public comment period. Let's see, Morgan, I guess it's time for staff findings and recommendations.
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Roofs, 4.5.1 and 4.5.4. 4.5.4, as we know, states that standing seam metal roofs shall have a pan width of no greater than 24 inches. Pans shall be completely flat without corrugation, provide double lock seams with flush ridge and hip flashings on contributing structures. These statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is within the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concern. The structure is a contributing structure. The certificate of appropriateness application is an after-the-fact request, and the proposed design is incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission deny the request for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Okay, thank you. So, Commissioners, again, I think I've already summarized where we are with things. Do we have any questions?
Was there any contact with the city prior to the change of the roof? Not inspections, building inspection, et cetera? No, sir. So it was another missed opportunity where...
Mr. Rob, I need you to come to a microphone because unfortunately we're all on TV here. So I'll try to smile if you'll try to smile.
Lift the mic up, please. Yeah, thank you.
So I had just asked if there was any contact with anyone in the city about it, and the answer was no.
No, sir.
Because we do have a good relationship with the inspections department,
I
and they
understand
will
that
refer
now.
you immediately to Ms. Potts. Yeah, the problem really is you didn't seek, and I'm talking to our commissioner, excuse me. We're done. Y'all can sit down, excuse me. The church didn't seek any of the steps of approval. And that is the basic cause of the problem. And while I understand the roofer coming to their rescue, there's nothing in the guidelines that address that type of issue where you completely ignore them. And I think since I've been on the commission, we have had people that came for after the fact, but they had always done it in compliance or modified it to be in compliance ultimately before we issued a certificate of appropriateness. So I think here, any approval here would be for an absolutely non-complying roof. And I think Mr. Thompson did lay out pretty clearly that there aren't many cases like this in the city. And certainly none other than the one explained one on Avenue A. But I think there's, the city can work with them after the fact, but I do think that the roof is incongruous, and I can't think of a reason that would be substantial enough to not grant a variance, because we don't grant variances, but to approve a COA.
The mention of the variance, that was something I was going to comment on. By the way, I agree with your assessment. We don't grant variances as far as I understand. I'm just putting that question out to my fellow commissioners.
No, that is correct.
Okay. So that's something that's not in our power to grant or deny. We only approve or deny certificates of appropriateness. So it sort of limits our ability to render a decision that might be something that sort of helped everybody here. We only have the ability to approve or deny. Am I correct in that?
Or approve with conditions.
Or approve with conditions.
Okay, so we've heard one position and we've heard a clarification on our authority. Are there any other positions that would like to be shared at this point?
Well, I mean, I'll give you my views. I mean, this is clearly, as Mr. Thompson said, I mean, clearly this has come up before. I mean, it's clearly addressed in the guidelines. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He went through it in detail. It's a terrible situation that this has gotten into. You depend on contractors or whoever. You depend on people to tell you stuff, and I can see how you get into these kind of situations. But if it comes down to, I mean, what we've been asked to do, to build on what you said, is to pass on whether this is congruous or not congruous, and I just don't see how you can make the case that this is congruous, because it's not. And I guess that's where I'm at.
I have another thought. I know we can approve or deny or approve, as you just educated me, approve with conditions. Can we deny with conditions? Is there such a thing?
Don't think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. So
I think there's maybe an opportunity if we were to deny it for the city to work closely with them on some alternatives for whether it's funding or opportunities in the marketplace, et cetera. And certainly maybe we can't recommend this, but perhaps maybe if there's any financial penalties to put those off until there's been some agreement about a path forward.
Well, the unfortunate thing is if we don't, what they presented here tonight is an example of what everybody else did, and that should, I guess, the argument was that because somebody else did it, it makes this okay, or whatever the argument is. And the problem is if we agree to this, we've just, furthered that on down the road. Everybody else is going to make the same argument. And you essentially have negated the guy.
I'm not arguing
negated
we
the whole thing.
I'm not arguing we modify what the roof would look like, but rather that maybe there's grant opportunities, maybe other things the things that are listed, if it were a demolition by neglect, there are some things the city can recommend to someone in a financial situation. It doesn't apply here, but those are the remedies outlined in that. Public grants, private grants, et cetera. It's not a case of forgiving tax revenue because they don't pay tax now.
Mr. Chairman, could you remind us the time frame, and maybe Ms. Potts needs to go over. If it's denied, there will be a time frame because it doesn't have a COA. When the sequence of events and how that goes forward after, if this is denied.
Would you care to help me with that, Morgan?
If it's denied, there's a 30-day appeal process, which it will be appealed to the Board of Adjustments. But at this point, if it's denied, we can come back with another idea, perhaps the architectural shingles, which are permitted, or we could try to put on a correct metal pan roof. Those would be our options.
Does that answer your question?
So 30 days.
The appeal process ends after 30 days. After that, I think that we could work together towards a positive outcome.
A what?
We could work together to achieve a positive outcome.
Positive outcome.
Yes, but if it's denied, they could turn around a new COA application tomorrow, and they would be on your next agenda, if they wish.
The appeal, you said, Morgan, goes.
If you chose to submit another COA application, you could do it in the next couple of days, and you would just be on the docket for the October meeting. It would be the same process that you did before, design review, and then back here again. And I will provide you those dates.
If it's appealed, you said it goes to the Board of Adjustment, and they have 30 days to file the appeal. Is that correct? Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just also am struggling with this for other reasons. One, our goal here is to preserve historic structures, and water inside of a historic structure is the most damaging thing that can happen. And this, we do know that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so acknowledging that, I do think that we're in a really difficult place now. We know that their actions moved to preserve this property because it was endangered. And that causes me pause to penalize them at their actions at this time. And I'm struggling with it
All right,
for those reasons.
thank you. So,
Well, I mean, not to mince words with you, I don't think we're looking to penalize them for anything.
No, I don't think we are penalizing
Yeah.
them, but any action we take has the potential of penalty in the long run, because we don't have any control beyond what we say yes or no.
Right.
And there will be consequences either way.
I have one final question. I'm prepared to make a motion. Morgan,
Sir.
if this gets appealed to the Board of Adjustment, do you know their process?
Their dates and their due dates, I do not know offhand. Mr. Greg McCoy, he is the land use administrator. He would handle the appeal. It would go directly to him. I would not be involved.
So it could end up either back with us, or they could make a decision that either upholds or overrides what we...
no.
Let me clarify.
Yeah.
An appeal to the board, if you will, an appeal to the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Adjustment only reviews our compliance with our procedures.
That is correct.
It does not review the decision.
Okay.
That is correct.
So if we had not allowed people to speak or
We didn't do
things
proper
like that,
notice.
you know,
Or
just,
notice wasn't given properly, or
Correct.
other procedural, but
It-
they don't second guess or change the decision unless we fail to comply with the proper procedures.
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, so there's no passing the buck tonight.
No,
You know,
Right.
the decision
There's
comes
no,
right.
there's no
right here.
recourse then.
Yeah, well.
And I'd point out that, you know, we do have an opportunity in the guidelines to use asphalt shingles, which in retrospect would have been a more cost-effective solution for this problem and the water.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, let me hold you right there. Any other discussion we have? Mr. Joe says he'd like to make a motion. Hearing none, I'm sorry, please proceed.
I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 405 Avenue A, New Bern, North Carolina, 2856060 to be incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Roofs, section 4.5.1 and 4.5.4. Findings of facts: the proposed project is within the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concerns. The structure is a contributing structure. The certificate of appropriateness application is an after-the-fact request, and the proposed design is incongruous with the guidelines.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Are all commissioners satisfied they understand the motion as stated?
This would deny their request.
Correct. Any further discussion about the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Miss Nancy. Okay. So our application did not succeed. I would like to be in touch. We've talked about some other possibilities, and I'd like to continue those discussions with you if you'll allow it. I would want to thank you very much for communicating with us. And again, it's a regrettable situation for all of us, but I give you my commitment. We'll get it resolved to some kind of satisfactory reconciliation. I just can't tell you what it looks like right now. All right? Yeah, you're certainly welcome. I appreciate your cooperation.
Thank you all.
All right. Sure. We can take a 3-minute recess if we can. I'm going to call us back to order after that brief 3-minute recess. We're on the new business agenda, I believe, item B. Morgan, if you would, please give us an introduction.
Yes, up next is 317 Pollock Street. This is a COA request by Tarkeel and Associates. This is to include the removal of brick masonry, an existing metal door and a concrete walkway in the tertiary ABC, and to install in its place an aluminum storefront door with a glass transom, installation of exposed aggregate concrete walkway, and the construction of an addition to a contributing structure in the tertiary ABC. Lucian is here this evening. I think he has a minor adjustment to make if the board would be interested in hearing it.
Okay. Let's see. Lucian, are you ready to walk us through your application?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm Lucian Bond with Tar Heel Associates, and here tonight to talk about a CO application to build a roof system across the back of this building. This is 317 Pollock Street. This is in the rear, I should say, of 317 Pollock Street. The front of this building, you might know, is the first floor is Carolina Creations, and the second floor has offices, including the architect's office of Manny Blanch and Falconberry. We have two parts to this application. One part is to make alterations to a contributing structure. We do believe this to be a contributing structure. We could not find any history to present to the commission. I do believe it was built in about 1930, in that time frame, but to be sure it's contributing. This is how it looks today. We came before the commission last year or year before, and were granted a COA to add these gooseneck lights across the top of the building, to add these awnings, and to put a copper standing seam flat panel roof over this little bump out addition. This little bump out addition is commonly referred to as the jail, and I may slip up and call it that myself, but the jail, if you look at it from the side, has a pair of steel gates. Should have a picture of that for you. We'll come back to that. As I said, we have two parts to the application. One is to make alterations to the structure, and the second is to build an addition onto the structure. The portion of the work that involves alterations would involve that we would be hard, perhaps impossible for you to read the writing here, but let me just point out that what we're simply trying to say is this is what we call our demolition plan, and we will, in fact, be demolishing some of the interior brick courses that are inside the jail. We as well will be removing some brick associated with this entry that leads into 317B Pollock Street. There is a hollow metal frame and door at this location. It's a modern day frame and door that we're going to take out and remove. We will, and that's about all. I mean, we're going to take the gates off. We're going to take the steel gates off, even though that was not in
your packet. I think your packet probably says those gates are to remain. There has been a change, and I'll go through the change in just a little bit. But part of the change is to remove the gates. As well, we will come in to, this is Jack Reed Lane, which belongs to the city. This is an alleyway that connects over toward Pollock Street. This is Jack Reed Lane, where there's a water fountain out here, and this contains a combination of brick pavers and exposed aggregate concrete in Jack Reed Lane. So at this very point here, we will, all of this that you see within this frame is just concrete, just regular old concrete. Our proposal is to cut here, and follow the back of the curb all the way around to the end of the property and remove all of this concrete that's within this area. We as well will remove a portion of curb. I would point out that the property corner for my building owner is here. So he owns this curb and valley, and so we're proposing to remove, it's hard to see, the hatched lines that are associated with where we will make a cut, where we'll essentially cut here and remove all of that. And I think that's pretty much all that we will be removing. Just to reiterate, the brickwork associated inside the jail, the brickwork associated with this opening, and to include removing the door, removing the steel gates, and removing this concrete. So that pretty much concludes the alterations to the contributing structure. So now we're talking about the addition to the contributing structure. Let me first talk about what we propose to build in the way of a roof canopy across the back of the building. Here's the jail with the new copper roof that exists. This is where the steel gates are that we're going to be taking out. But we're planning to build a copper standing seam, flat panel, no roof that extends across the back of the building. This would be supported by wood posts, 8x8 treated, rough sawn wood posts. There will be a railing placed here, be a powder coated aluminum railing. There will be a water feature of some description. There will be a water feature here, self-contained, just to add an ambiance for the space. In plan, the new look that is being proposed is that all of the concrete that we were talking about taking out will be sectioned off with brick pavers, antique brick pavers, as you see. And then once that's in place, we will pour exposed aggregate concrete in those paneled areas. You might recall me mentioning that over here on Jack Reed Lane, that is what one sees as one walks up and down between the two buildings is exposed aggregate and brick pavers. So this is kind of in keeping with that. We will be, as part of that work, we'll be pouring a new section of gutter, that's a curb and gutter, and that is represented by this dark line here. The two parking spaces that are there will remain, and they will still be, even though shortened a bit, they still remain 18 feet in depth, which is the city minimum for parking spaces as far as their depth is concerned. The change that Morgan was referring to has to do with, in your packet, we talked about, and in the description of work and the list of materials, we talked about using or installing an aluminum frame storefront door. Find my picture. That door that we were talking about installing was going to be back in the jail. We were going to take the hollow metal door out and put an aluminum storefront door in its place. We have, however, want to change our application and to see whether or not we could get a COA to replace the two steel gates. The lintel would still stay just as you see it, and in place of the gates would be a wrought iron glass storefront door without the transom. The doors would be full height doors from top to bottom. This is like just under 8 feet tall. So the doors would be 8 feet tall, and it would fit within roughly a 5-foot opening. The doors, of course, would have to be made as outswing, excuse me, and they would be fully ADA compliant with closures and all such. So we think that that is a very nice change to remove the gates and instead of putting a door here, this area will become heated and cooled. This will be a foyer. One would then enter into a very wide brick opening to get into the business beyond. So this would become part of a heated and cooled space. We did have all of our drawings, our application, my description of materials, my list of materials, my description of work. All of my drawings now have these changes on them. I brought a copy of all the changes on our application for the commission to have. If it's appropriate, I would like to.
Any of the commissioners have an objection to the nature of the change that we've just learned?
The door specifically?
Correct.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah, we can go ahead and circulate those.
That is, in fact, the only change. It's,
Okay.
Fine, and just a question there then, you're still going to shore up the openings on the previous inside? What was to be the exterior door? Remember the bricks were all you're still gonna shore that up somehow.
Thank you for that segue. Yes, there's needed work for sure, structurally speaking, for the brickwork associated with this entranceway into the heated space. So, yeah, all of the inside the jail, there is this brickwork, there's this arch that exists above this window of this door, that has been in a bad state of repair. It's actually, it's amazing to us that it even has stood the test of time. Not much, there hasn't been much use. This door does not get used. This is the back exit from the business that's there, and it's not used except would be in the case of emergency, of course, but there's no going and coming out of this door. The steel gates stay locked, and this is the original structure, if you will. This is the original brick for the contributing structure. There's a look perhaps through the steel gates. So what we would propose to do is to remove all of the interior brick. What you have there is the structural part of the building and of the jail that we added onto would remain. We would not do anything to jeopardize the structural integrity of the jail. It's this inner brickwork, it's this inner course of brickwork that's added that went up to about 8 feet. We will be rebuilding the arch over this opening. It still will be an arch, but it'll be a structural brick arch. What's there is hardly, I really don't think it's structurally sound. But what we put back will be structurally sound. So, I suppose that's another photo of that back area. But it's tough to photograph. But the outer walls of the jail are perhaps, I think, at least 3 wide thick, 3 bricks thick. And then there's another course of brick just on the inside that was run up just to 8 feet tall. There was some explanation given by someone who knows the history of the building, and apparently there was a pawn shop and a pool room back in the day, and the pawn shop part of the business, I think the owner of that business stored some of his materials back into this jail area. This little, and it was said that maybe he was just reinforcing the walls when he added that inner layer of brickwork. So, maybe he didn't think the material, the stuff that he was keeping in there was secure enough. We're just not sure. But the intention is to try to make this a very attractive entrance into this portion of the first floor. There's a suite, street address 317B, that is on the other side of that. Now, We have not come up with a floor plan as of yet, what this space is gonna look like, but I can tell you the proposed use of this space is, an assembly occupancy, and so there'll be patrons that will come and go through what will be this new entrance door. And this will be the primary entrance, I should say. This is the primary ingress and egress for this business. There's another door here that's their primary entrance is here. This will remain in place. So we're trying to create a new entrance, and so this is hoping to be a very nice and very attractive entrance foyer that leads you into this business. Again, that's a steel door that will be made to custom fit the opening where the gates are now. The roof structure that we're proposing to build must be built if you're inside the number 1 fire district or in the downtown area. One either constructs out of steel or one constructs out of heavy timber. The folks might remember Morgan's Tavern, which this commission approved. That project involved the use of heavy exposed wood timber. And this is precisely what this roof system will have. We're proposing 8x8 pressure treated wood columns. We have 4x10 beams, and the rafters will be a full 2 inches wide by full 10 inches tall. In other words, they'll be, not nominal lumber. It will be the full dimension lumber. Will be rough sawn and treated. All the connections of the timbers will be made with structural Simpson straps and angles and clips, similar to the construction we used at Morgan's Tavern. There will be a copper gutter placed across the front of the business, of the roof. Water would drain this way, and it would drop into a copper gutter which comes out into the parking lot. The railings that you see are there, I think primarily for decorative reasons. I will say that that's a powder-coated aluminum. I might have said that before. It's a powder-coated aluminum railing that has the 4-inch spacing between the pickets. And that will, I think, make this area an attractive area. It's going to be where one could sit. There's going to be some nice ceiling fans that drop down here. There are some nice light fixtures being proposed as well that will be downcasting. That will be bright as you drive around in the parking lot that's out here. I think the owner of this business hopes that the patrons that are inside will come out and enjoy this area. We think that perhaps if the city grants a permit to the business to allow him to put tables and chairs where he can put them up during business hours and take them down during business hours, this will also create a nice sitting area here. I want to mention that we talked about where the property line for this business is. Maybe it's a little hard to see, but there's a red line. There's the corner, and there's the red line, which represents this gentleman's property. Now, from that red line out to where they're gonna make the cut, that is known as federal alley. That's a 10-foot right-of-way that is owned by the city. We have approached the Department of Public Works and have actually obtained an encroachment permit. We furnished a copy of the encroachment permit to Morgan. Just has been handed down as of this morning, actually. But all the work that we do inside of Federal Alley has to be approved by the Public Works Director, and we have a big note to that effect here. But that has been approved by the city, so you know. So I may have missed something, but at that point I would say that that's the end of my presentation, and
All right.
would open it up. Any questions from any of the
Well,
commissioners?
before you get there, I would ask if there's any public comment either for or against this application. And I'm seeing none. And so with that, I think that brings us to the staff recommendation.
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Modifications, 3.2.1, windows, doors, and openings, 4.3.1, entrances, 4.4.1 and 4.4.3, roofs, 4.5.4, masonry, 5.1.1, 5.1.2, 5.1.3, and last 5.1.4. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is within the tertiary area of visual concern. The structure is a contributing structure. I did locate it on a 1885 Sanborn map. The proposed design is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the request for the major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Lucian, last words? Are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Okay, super. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments at this point?
Can I just ask a question on where the figure is standing on this drawing right here, or rendering, that door right next to him, right by your pencil there, is that the existing door, or are you replacing that with something?
That is in fact the existing door, and that will remain, yes, sir.
Okay, so the transom's gonna stay above the door as well?
The transom will stay above the door. The awning, quite obviously, will have to,
Sure.
will have to come down. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question about the brick that you're going to remove and save in your proposal. Is that the brick that you pointed out, that the 3 deep bricks around the frame of the door within the jail?
We definitely want to save the brick.
And are you planning to reuse the brick?
Well, I mentioned that we've got we're going to have some brick pavers that will outline the new walkway. And we haven't done a count. We have access to other brick pavers that will match. These are whole brick that can be used as a paver. Once they're cleaned up, they would be very attractive. So yes, they would definitely be saved and reused. We do not have, there's Jack Reed Lane. Didn't have the picture a minute ago. We are not suggesting that, and not proposing that we would use a paver like what was used during this project. But we would be proposing to use exposed agri, as you see there. But our pavers will be old, solid, antique brick, reclaimed from perhaps this project, reclaimed from other projects. We have a lot of brick to deed it.
Well, I did notice that you mentioned that you're gonna save it, and then you called for other bricks. I wondered if you plan to reuse that here.
Yeah, I might have not mentioned that we will have brick bases. The bases around the columns will be, also will brick up around the bottom of these columns, these two
Ah.
columns.
I see.
And that will be done with old reclaimed antique brick as well.
I think very thorough, as usual. Just a question, I had, because it was more or less exterior, I had thought perhaps we needed to address the fact that the area above the now interior door required repair, therefore the removal of the bricks. But now it's really an interior space. The entire jail is an interior space, and we really don't have jurisdiction, correct?
Well, I would say since we can see it, we have jurisdiction at this point, but
At
after
this
the
point.
work is done.
Yeah, we won't maybe have jurisdiction when he's completed the project, but right now,
So I mean, I would probably just add something, repairs necessary around and above the existing exit door in the rear of 317 Dean Hall. Just because he's got to remove those and redo it.
And do we have any questions or concerns about the proposed steel entry doors?
Yes, I wanted to know, what's the panes? Are they gonna be like a safety glass or just regular glass panes?
1 inch thick, tempered glass.
Thank you.
Okay, and also I wonder if we have any questions about the balustrade. I appreciate the 4-inch comment and the smile. Lucian always likes to give me a little smile when he talks about the spacing of balusters.
Well, sir, I would tell you that we would be proposing a, just as we have right there, we propose, and then I've got a picture, 1 second, please.
And it's just been a coincidence that we have been studying up on railings, ornamental metal and otherwise.
Yeah, this is Morgan's Tavern, the rear of Morgan's Tavern, and here you see the brick column, and you see how that's attached, and this is a powder coated aluminum railing, and we would propose, so we're proposing to do the very same thing, same rail cap, same attachment into brick pavers down below.
Thanks also to our studying, you used the term wrought iron for the
Right.
door. So is it a cast iron door, or is it just a heavy aluminum?
It's steel.
Steel.
Steel, okay. So it's a
It's
steel door.
made in Texas, and,
Okay.
the owner, found the picture, and I did some investigating, and found out that it's within the budget, and it is, the top quality product for sure. I think if you would ask me if that is a, true divided or SDL,
Well,
I'm
it,
not sure.
it
I'm
appears
ready
to
for
be.
a motion if you are ready.
I had a question about the railing and the door. One is the powder coated aluminum, and the other is you're proposing is a wrought iron door. And I was just wondering if they are, this is maybe an aesthetic question, so I'm not sure, but that I'm on the right, a solid ground here.
He just said it was gonna be a steel
Steel.
door, actually.
Wrought iron
Well,
is what your drawings say.
Yes, we have, what we're proposing, the company says that the door is a wrought iron door.
which is more substantial in weight and so forth, yeah.
Let there be no misconception here. It is a steel door.
Well, that's what, I missed that class. But my grandfather being a blacksmith, I was questioning where he got the pig iron.
Well, excellent question, but I feel fairly certain that the craft used, and Mr. Joe may have to straighten me out, because sometimes I speak of things I know not.
We have a blacksmith here.
Steel is a better
Yeah,
choice.
so, but the way it is produced and manufactured, it uses modern
Material.
steel techniques as opposed to hand forging.
Right.
How did I do?
Excellent.
Is that all right?
Steel is the way to go.
Nonetheless, with one each class, it'd be a pretty heavy door.
Right, and nonetheless, as Mr. Rich points out, it seems that it's going, provided it's approved, going to be a substantial door. And can the aluminum powder-coated railing stand up to the competition?
The aluminum powder coated railing has certainly proven itself to be a worthy product as far as holding up. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but there's a lot of powder coated aluminum products out there today and in and around this town. We should have put up our fair share. I can represent it to be a quality product to you. Would your concern be that it would not be worthy?
Compatible with the door.
Would you say compatible? Well, certainly aesthetically, it's going to be black.
Right.
And metal, and one's not going to know whether that's wrought iron, aluminum, or what they're made out of. This door has to meet the security requirement, has to meet ADA compliance. So it's going to be strong and sturdy. It's 8 feet tall. It'll occupy this entire oval. I apologize for not having any more particulars as to the door, but quite frankly, I just don't have it right now. Be glad to furnish staff with.
Yeah, I would say because you are a regular in our jurisdiction, you are certainly aware of the rules of it being at a minimum simulated divided light. And should that not be the case, obviously we expect you to get in touch with staff.
Yeah, well, I can assure you I'm not
Also,
$10,000 door without it being approved.
yeah, well, that's fair enough. I understand that and I appreciate it. Also, the same is true should the jail, as we've been calling it, opening be something less than about 6 feet 4 inches. You might have another problem that you'll need to come see staff about before you order your door. So, but that's a little code thing. I don't need to get into it because that's beyond our purview, but it does change the appearance of the door in terms of accessibility. And so I can talk to you about that after the meeting if you'd like. I don't think it's germane to where we are right now.
Well, we certainly have the inches necessary to exit the occupant building.
All right. Any other questions? I think Mr. Jim might have been ready to make a motion if we were finished with our deliberation.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 317B Pollock Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance 15411 to 15429 and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Modifications 3.2.1, windows, doors, and openings 4.3.1, entrances 4.4.1, 4.4.1 and 3, roofs 4.5.4, masonry 5.1.1 through 4, and findings of fact, the proposed project is within the tertiary area of visual concern. The structure is a contributing structure. The proposed design is not incongruous with the guidelines. Adding repairs necessary and around above the existing exit door in the rear of 317B Pollock Tertiary ABC. And a condition, the exterior door will be steel with windows per submitted picture without transom, replacing the existing metal grates.
Do we have a second?
Metal gates, excuse me, metal gates.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
You might have had a question about the way I've worded that. Is that?
You were actually just including all the things that I'd asked, that I came to you about tonight.
But it's not in the part we had submitted, right? It's everything you asked for.
Yeah, it's in the,
It may be a little redundant, but I think it sounded accurate with my recollection of the presentation, as well as I know we've got this supplemental handout that Morgan will make sure gets in the file.
Yeah. Conditions just are to clarify that there was something added when we get to the minutes. There was something added to the original application.
All right. So we're all maybe on the same page again. Any further discussion?
Yes, the description about the windows in the door, what you're referring to, that they be simulated or true divided light, is that correct?
I didn't clarify that. If you want to,
I think that.
they may well be true divided light.
I'm thinking that they would.
So we can add that, windows, parentheses, simulated or true divided light.
Have a really bad habit of allowing friendly amendments, Rich. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay.
So do you accept the amendment?
The amendment has been accepted. Any further discussion? We okay? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Can we have a motion to issue a certificate of appropriateness?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Morgan.
Yes.
Item C.
All right, this is for, 414 Pollock Street. The Athens Theater, New Bern Civic Theater, this is to include the replacement of 2 wooden doors with a single metal and glass door in the secondary ABC, the installation of exterior lighting in the primary ABC, and the installation of cement coating to facade cornerstones in the primary ABC. It should be noted that the cement cornerstones is an after-the-fact request. They are here this evening to represent their application, and I'll let them have the floor.
Good evening. I'm James Chittick, a member of the board of New Bern Civic Theater.
Good evening.
I'm also with Jay Figueroa, who's also a member of the board, and our executive director, Angelina Doyle. This right here is the exterior of the door we want to replace. This is the same door from the interior. These doors latch at the top and the bottom. It's a pull chain to activate that door. It is not, it says it's an exit, but it's not a really good exit. We're proposing to replace it with this door. This door is a similar product to the one seen at the back of the retail establishments on Middle Street. For example, Bebop's Cafe or Cow Cafe each have a solid slab door like this with a window. It is a metal-clad solid door. It will have a panic bar release so that it swings out. So that is the A part of our application. The B part of our application is adding lights to the exterior. We've changed this from our working meeting. We had a light here at the center that we have now moved up in behind the what we call the shield that's up there. So the light would be hidden behind the shield and be directed in a downward against washing the front facade of the building and adding light. And then The lights on the side are still the same place. We're bringing in an option to the big black square ones. It was stated in the meeting that they like something that would blend in a little bit better. So these lights right here, this light is what would go up underneath the shield and be pointing down. And then these lights would be here and here at the two pediment areas of the building on either side. And the C section is these cornerstones on the front of the building, here and here, which during this drawing they weren't represented correctly. They were actually stones. They were chipped off in the 60s when an Art Deco finish was put on the building, which was then removed before the 80s. And after our renovation project, the contractor never completed the stones. So what we wanted to do was just parge over those with a masonry product to give it back its stone look instead of it was broken stone with expandable foam in there that everybody said the front looked beautiful, but what happened here? And so we were up there trying to finish that little bit up so that it would match the rest of the completed project. So those are our A, B, and C that we are looking for approval to continue on this evening. And do you have any questions?
Very good. First, we must ask for public comment, either for or against. And seeing none. Commissioners?
One question on the B part of the application, the lights.
Lights, yeah.
The one that you said was going to go behind the shield, it looks like you're picking a sort of a dark brown or a metallic. Are they all going to be consistent or different?
Actually, there's only one of these lights right here, okay? And it will be hidden up underneath this. Let's see how that works. This area right here, if you could zoom in on that.
Right.
There we go. That's about 8 inches off the front of the building. So this light would tuck up underneath it. So the light wouldn't be seen.
Mm-hmm. And then the ones on the side?
The ones on the side would be seen like that.
Right. And are you going to... Well, I don't think color is our purview. I was just wondering which ones you were going to choose. It looks like you got a choice.
Well, there's like a bronze, a black, and a white of that style. We're going to go with the white. We're trying to do something that would blend in as much as possible with the color of this cream brick.
Thank you.
Good question. Do we have
Also, another part of that detail, these lights are all in white.
All three are going to be white?
White. It'll be a white beam. No color.
White light, you mean?
A white light.
White light.
Oh, white light. I got you.
They are LEDs, but they're white.
Very good. I appreciate the adjustments you've made based on the feedback during design review. I'm not sure who came up with tucking that center fixture up there at the top of the parapet, but that was a pretty darn good idea.
You can take credit. It's right over here.
All right. So,
but you had to plant the idea that it's like, that doesn't look right, and then we had to go back and think.
As I hope tonight has demonstrated on more than one occasion, we try to be part of the team,
right?
Not in spite of the team. And all right, if we don't have any further questions, did I skip something? I sure did. Did you not give your recommendation? I jump over that every time. So let's do the staff recommendation.
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Modifications 3.2.1 through 3.2.4. 4. Windows, doors, and openings, 4.3.1. Entrances, 4.4.1. Utilities, 2.3.6. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is within the primary and secondary areas of visual concern. Metal doors were available at the original date of construction. And lastly, the proposed design is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the request for major alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. So now that I've somewhat corrected course, if there are there any further questions from commissioners? And if there are not, is someone ready to put forth a
If I
motion?
can just ask Morgan, so you removed you removed the entire number 3,
I did.
including the cement comment?
Yes, in
Okay.
light of their changes,
Correct.
I
Okay.
did remove numbers 3 and 4 on your staff recommendations
Okay.
and the condition that I mentioned because they made some excellent changes.
Okay, I can make the motion if you're ready.
Well, I did want to ask, looking at utilities, guideline 2.3.6 talks about the lamping, that they should replace or put the lighting in there that's appropriate for the period of the building, unless perhaps the caveat might be that it is for safety, lighting for safety. Is that what the purpose of the lighting is? On
Yes.
the sides?
Yes. It gets dark. Away from the center, we have decent lighting, but as you get to the sides of the building, it gets dark. And we do have a lot of patrons who stand out there on the sidewalk in the evening, either at intermission or before the show starts, or after the show is let out at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Mhm. Good question.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 414 Pollock Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Sections 15.411 to 15.429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Modifications 3.2.1, 2, 3, and 4. Windows, doors, and openings 4.3.1. Entrances 4.4.1. And two 2.3.6, and I'd like to add 4.72, which is life safety. Fire doors should be placed in a visually unobtrusive area.
And what was the number reference?
4.7.2. Findings of fact, the proposed project is within the primary and secondary area of visual concern. Metal doors were available at the original date of construction, and the proposed design is not incongruous with the guidelines.
Okay. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none or hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have a motion to issue a certificate of appropriateness?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're approved.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you.
We made it out before 10.
It's part of the mission. All right, moving on. I think we have one other item on our new business agenda. Morgan?
Our last contestant for the evening. We have 205 Pollock Street. This is to include the installation of a metal garage door on a non-contributing structure in the tertiary ABC. And Ms. Sharon is here this evening to represent Avery and Michael Kempf, whom you're familiar with. They're the owners of the property, but they are in Virginia for quite some time. So she'll be here to represent the application. Turn over to her. Yeah, I did. This was the one that was submitted at design review. Don't remember there really being any heartburn.
No, I asked for heartburn. This is a detached garage in the back of 205 Pollock. It was built in 1987. The garage door is falling apart. The house is currently being rented, and the renters have complained. And so she wants to replace it with a metal door. Do you have a picture of that?
This is the existing. This is, what she is proposing, but she would like to have the glass inserts.
She was open to either way. I think she decided, unless you've talked to her since. Okay, sorry.
That's
She
okay.
decided on the solid door.
Well, that's good. That's what we have a picture of.
Okay.
That'll work out just fine.
And that's basically it.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
That's okay.
Okay, so we've had our presentation by the applicant. Is there any public comment for or against? Hearing none. Commissioners? Questions or comments, or maybe even a motion?
And Mr. Chairman, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 205 Pollock Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, section 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Modifications 3.2.1, contemporary materials 5.5.1, 2, and 3, and findings of fact. The proposed project is within the tertiary area of visual concern. Metal garage doors were available at the original date of construction of the garage, and the structure is a non-contributing structure, and the proposed design is not incongruous with guidelines.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Commissioner Morrison, what was that modifications guideline one more time, please?
Modifications, I'm sorry, 3.2.1, just select materials consistent with the structure.
Thank you.
Materials available at the time of construction since we.
And I know there hadn't been a whole lot of discussion on this application, but it's pretty straightforward. All right. I guess all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, do we have a motion to issue a certificate of appropriateness?
So
So moved.
moved.
Go ahead.
We'll let Morgan sort out the motion maker and the second on that, if that's okay with commissioners.
Yes.
I'll be happy to second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? There we go. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Sharon. All right, Morgan, that brings us to just a quick update, administrative update from Minor Works.
As you can see, a lot of it's been some landscaping projects for minor landscaping at 611 Craven Street, 312 Johnson Street, minor landscaping as well at 216 Metcalf Street and 513 Middle Street. There was some repointing of masonry at 214 Pollock, repointing of masonry for 2 chimneys at 701 Broad. We know that one. It's progressing.
Okay. We'll
And
take it.
501 Metcalf Street, they installed a historical home marker, shadow box. That's been it.
All right, any questions from commissioners regarding,
I did note that 701 brought all the scaffoldings down. I don't know if he's finished, but all the scaffolding's down.
I need to look into that. Thank you.
yeah, hopefully that was just storm potential related, but you never can tell.
I need to look into that. Thank you very much for telling me.
All right. General public comment. Do we have any tonight for our dwindling public? All right. That said, do we have a motion to adjourn? Or do we have things we'd like to talk about?
I'll be happy to make the motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. So We're adjourned.